Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation I've received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, how many days per week should I lift weights to build muscle effectively? In my opinion, more volume, more frequency, more intensity, and more consistency always equates to more results. Okay, so I'm a firm believer if you truly want to build something, whether it's a business, whether it's your portfolio, or whether it's your physique, you have to put in the time, the effort, and the consistency. Okay, so to answer this question, my recommendation for anyone who truly wants to build their physique, as in they want to strip away body fat and they want to build muscle, I believe everyone should be in the gym anywhere from 4 to 6 days a week. I really do. And a lot of people say, well, I don't have time. I'm like, well, then you don't really want it, period. So, I mean, there is 24 hours in a day. A workout takes about 45 minutes to do. Okay. I know some people like to spend 60 minutes in the gym. That's fine too. I've got clients that I do 60-minute sessions with. But to me, it should not take you more than an hour and a half to get to and from the gym and get your workout done. So that leaves you a large portion of the day for the rest of your day to get all your other work done, okay? And your family obligations and your social functions and whatever you may have going on with your career. So there is time to do it. It's just you have to make the time to do it, okay? Now, there's a lot of people that say, well, that's overtraining if I'm training 6 days a week in the gym. Not true. I mean, you have so many different muscle groups, so you can prioritize each muscle group specifically on each individual day, which will allow you to hit each muscle group more with more volume, more consistency, more frequency, which will give you again better results. So that's why I talk about if you're doing like, for example, a 5 day training split in the gym, that could look something like day one could be chest and abs, day two could be back, day three could be shoulders, day four could be arms, day five could be legs, and you take 2 days off. So, you could do a 4 day split if you want to as well. You could do a 6 day split, but my recommendation is 4 to 6 days. Now, again, a lot of people will go into the gym for 2 to 3 days a week. I think that's great for maintenance. Will you get results? Sure. I train people who work out 2 or 3 times a week and they have gotten results. Would they get better results if they were in the gym more? Of course, right? But I mean, again, people have to manage their expectations accordingly. So if you're only willing to go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, you have to manage your expectations and say, okay, well, I'm going to achieve good results, but I'm not going to achieve great results because I'm not putting in more time and more effort. So I'm always very honest and upfront with people about that too, because whenever I have new clients come work with me, and I've talked about this in the past, I don't try to push them to train 4 or 5 times a week in the gym. I tell them, no, no, we're going to start you off at twice a week, but we're going to build up to that. And if you don't want to build up to that, that's fine. You're going to get results, but you're going to get better results if you're in the gym more, whether that's with me or on your own or a combination of the two, you're going to get better results. Okay. So don't kid yourself and think if you're in the gym 2 days a week, you're going to get amazing results. No, you'll get good results for sure. You'll lose some body fat, you'll put on some muscle, but like anything in life, the more time, effort, and consistency you put into it, the better your results are going to be. All right. Okay. Nick, is full body training better than split routines for beginners? It's an unpopular opinion, but I don't think so. I'm a firm believer in using split training routines for everyone, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. I'm a firm believer that split training workouts work well. Okay, now split training would be, but for example, let's say you're training in the gym, you're brand new to the gym, you're doing 2 days a week. I would put someone on a program where day one they're doing chest, back, and legs. So it's kind of like a push, pull, and lower body. And day two would be shoulders, biceps, triceps, and abs. Okay. And I find that works really well for most beginners. And then as someone starts to get more advanced with their training, then maybe they add in a third day or a fourth day. We can split that up however we see fit. The combinations still have to make sense. So that's why I like putting chest and back together, agonist versus antagonist. I'll put maybe legs on their own day if they're doing a 3 day split then, because again, agonist versus antagonist, quadricep versus hamstring. Okay, and then shoulders and arms can get their own day as well because all those muscle groups are close together. So How you structure your split, that's really up to you. And if you're a coach, if you're working with a coach, to put together a plan that's suitable for your goals. Why I don't like full body routines and why I only use full body routines if I'm working out with someone once a week, which is rare. Most of my clients train at least twice a week. But on the odd occasion, if I'm training someone once a week or they only have one time a week to get in the gym, I'll recommend a full body workout. But I'm not a big fan of it because I feel like anything in life. So when you start your workout, you have a lot of energy, right? The first 30 minutes, if you're training hard, you've got a lot of energy. But then as those next 30 minutes or next last 15 minutes of workout start to come, you have less energy, less strength, less intensity. So if you're, for example, starting your workout off with chest, back, and legs, and then you hit the second half of your workout with shoulders, arms, and triceps, you're not really working your shoulders, triceps, and biceps to the full extent because you're already fatigued from working chest, back, and legs for the first half hour or first 20 minutes, right? So I don't like full body training splits. I don't really use them. Like I said, I'll use them on occasion if I'm only seeing someone once a week. But to me, they don't really help you build a physique. And they also put you at risk for injury because, like I said, I don't like putting, for example, back and biceps together. Why? Well, when you're doing back, you're using your biceps as your synergist muscle. So the time you get to biceps, they're tired. If a muscle is tired and you train it, you risk a potential tear, a strain. Who knows? So you don't want that, right? Same thing with chest and triceps. Your triceps are your synergist muscle in any push you do. Okay. So by the time you get to triceps after training chest, your triceps are going to be fried. So it's good to put those on separate days. So that's why I don't like full body workouts. If you have to do it, if you're in a situation where you really can only train once a week, I mean, do it, but don't expect incredible results from it and be very careful because, again, doing full body routines, in my opinion, doing a full body workout, you're asking for some sort of injury, especially if you are someone who lifts fairly heavy in the gym. All right. Okay. Nick, how long should I rest between sets for maximum muscle growth? So I've talked about this in the past. I don't believe in timing rest periods. I don't time rest periods for anyone, including myself. What I do recommend doing is staying the hell away from your phone. So why I say that is because when you have your phone on you in the gym and you're constantly looking at it in between sets, you're cruising Instagram, you're looking at TikTok reels, you're checking emails. That 45-second to 90-second rest period can easily become 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes. I've seen it time and time again with people in the gym. And the phone, I've said this time and time again, it's a distraction. So whenever I work out for myself, my phone stays on the sideline. I have my music on. I put my phone somewhere in the sideline so I still have access to my music, but I pick a playlist and I don't really very change off from that playlist. I just stick with it. I don't even change my music. I just keep focusing on what I need to do. Because if I get caught up on looking at an email or get caught up on something on social media, or maybe there's a video I want to check out, I get distracted. I'm not focused. And now my rest period is much longer than it should be. I always tell people instead of timing your rest periods, go by feel. So, in my opinion, you should be going when you're about 70% recovered. You don't want to go when you're 100% recovered because you're not going to stimulate any more muscle growth, right? Remember, for muscle to grow, it needs to be challenged. So, you need to train muscles when they're somewhat fatigued, not fully fatigued, but somewhat fatigued. So, 70% works well because you're going to recruit more muscle fibers to stimulate muscle protein synthesis for growth. Okay. That's how you build hypertrophy. So if you're resting for 5, 6 minutes between sets, well, you're going to be 100% recovered. You're not really going to grow muscle. You might get stronger. And I talked about how that's what powerlifters do. But if you really want to build an aesthetically pleasing physique, you have to keep those rest periods limited. So for me, I don't know exactly how long my rest periods are. I would say if I were to guess, they're probably about 45 seconds to a minute. But again, I don't time my rest periods. I go when I feel ready, about 70% recovered. Okay. And so that's very important too, because if you're going when you're like 30% recovered, well, now you risk injury, okay? Because you're not fully recovered. Maybe you're not breathing properly. Your joints are still a little bit tight or whatever it is. Maybe your muscles are cramping on you and you're going right away again. Not a good idea. So you have to get a feel for that. And that just takes time, right? It's like anything. The more that you do something, you start to adapt to it. So you understand and you get to kind of be at one with your body and you learn to listen to your body and your body will tell you, okay, let's go again. All right. But I've said this before. I truly believe the phones are a distraction. And I know some people out there will say, well, I'm just resting in between sets. I'm like, yeah, but you don't realize that when you're resting, your rest period has gone from easily 45 seconds to, like I said, 3 to 5 minutes. And people don't even realize because they're so focused and glued in on their phone. So, my recommendation, if you truly want to maximize your time in the gym, the phones have to stay either in your pocket or in your locker. They don't need to make an appearance on the gym or on the gym floor during your workout. There's no reason to. All right. Okay. Nick, is it better to use machines or free weights for building muscle? I'm an old school guy. I like machines. I like machines, but to me, free weights are always going to outperform machines. Have I used machines in the past? Sure, of course. But honestly, I found that for myself and for people I train, they get better results when they use free weights over machines. Now, you could use a combination of the two. If you're working out of a commercial gym and you want to use a combination of dumbbells, barbells, and hammer strength machines, I mean, I say go for it, of course. But for me, I don't have any machines at my gym. I have dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, cables, and that's what I use. And I've been able to train for competitions just using free weights, and I've been able to develop a pretty good physique, and I've done that with other people. So, I'm a firm believer in going with machines when they're necessary, as in maybe you're rehabilitating through an injury, okay? Or if you're someone who is, for example, getting ready for a contest and you're maybe a week out and you're a little bit worried about doing, let's say, barbell back squats because your body fat levels are very low, you're somewhat dehydrated, your energy levels are a bit lower, maybe you want to use a Smith machine. Okay, I understand. But if you're in the off season and you've got lots of carbs in your system and you're feeling good, squat rack all day, every day. So I'm not going to be that person who says don't use machines. I understand that machines have their place, but that place is always secondary to free weights. Just remember when you're working with free weights, you have to use your stabilizers. And when you have to use your stabilizers, that's how you build that solid, lean, dense muscle. And I've talked about building dense muscle bellies. And that takes years and years of training, but it also takes years and years of utilizing your stabilizers. You can't utilize your stabilizers if you're playing on a Smith machine or you're playing on a hammer strength machine or you're playing on a hack squat machine. You've got to get in a squat rack. You've got to squat. You've got to get under that bar. You've got to bench, right? You've got to do a combination of lat pull downs, seated cable rows, T-bar rows, bent over barbell rows. So the cables do help as well. But at the same time, the main focus should be towards the barbells and the dumbbells. Okay. Because I feel like that's what's going to get more bang for your buck. And I've seen the changes in people's physiques versus people who work primarily with free weights versus people who work with machines. The people who work with machines tend to burn out quite easily versus the people who work out with free weights because they don't have any strength in their stabilizers. Okay, so you talk to a lot of people in the gym, and most people prefer doing machines because machines are easier, right? Who the hell wants to get in the squat rack and put, 300 pounds on their back or whatever you're lifting, 225 pounds, doesn't matter, whatever weight is challenging for you, 100 pounds, but you have to stabilize that weight on the way up and down. Whereas if you're in a Smith machine, you don't have to stabilize anything. It's like going on a ride. So I would recommend that, if you had the choice, definitely, like I said, machines have their place. If you want to throw the one or two exercises in, go for it. But even when I used to train at commercial gyms, the bulk of my exercises were always free weights and cables. Okay, and I differentiate between cables and machines because cables are a little bit different. Cables allow you to keep constant tension on both the eccentric and concentric contractions, and you still have to use your stabilizers to a degree. Like when you're doing a lat pull down, you still have to stabilize that weight because you're going to lean back and you're going to stay in that position. You're not using, well, hopefully you're not using momentum and swinging all over the place. Okay, same thing with a seated cable row, tricep rope extension. So I find that that's a little bit more effective over machines because you still are using your stabilizers to a degree, but nothing is going to outperform free weights. Okay, so that's my opinion. I know it might not be a popular opinion, especially in this day and age with all the new technology they have in gyms now. But if you want to build that foundation, you got to work from the ground up, and that starts with free weights. All right. Okay. Nick, how do I calculate my calorie needs for fat loss versus muscle gain? You don't. You calculate your macronutrient needs. And, whenever I work with someone, whether it's a beginner or someone who's been working with me for years, I always start every single person I work with off with a basic template formula. And I take into consideration a few factors. One is their weight. One is their activity level. One is their fitness level. How well versed are they in the gym? And also one is how often are they going to the gym? How often are they working out? How often are they doing cardiovascular activity? Okay, so all these factors play a role when I put that formula together. But I do like to start everyone off with a basic template and then I make revisions along the way. So if I'm working with someone who, let's say, is 200 pounds and they need to lose probably about, let's say, 20, 25 pounds of fat. Okay. That does, I get a lot of people like this, right? So what I'll do is I start them off with a lot of food, a lot of clean food. Okay. And then I go from there. A lot of times when I put people on these clean diets in the first week or two, they're dropping weight like crazy because they're so used to eating McDonald's or Chipotle's or KFC or going out for lunches at the Keg or Cactus Club, wherever they go. And as soon as you clean up their diet, get rid of all that shit, they drop all that water weight. And you're like, oh, but I'm always full because you give me so much food. I'm like, yeah, but the food I'm giving you is not loaded with sodium. It's not processed carbohydrates. It's not full of sugars. So, of course, your body's going to get rid of all that water weight now. You're not going to be a bloated mess. And now we can start to tweak the diet so you're losing a little bit more body fat along the way. But a rule of thumb I generally use with most people, not everyone, but most people I work with. So I'm working with a 200-pound individual. I'll generally start that person off at about 200 grams of carbohydrates. So I'll give them 1 gram per pound of body weight. And with protein, I'll usually times that by 1.5, depending on, again, the activity level. So I might start that 200-pound person off with, let's say, 300 grams of protein. And fat's a funny one because I typically use more fat for women than I do for men. So it really depends on the gender here, because in my opinion, women actually need more healthy fats than men do, okay, just for hormonal balances. So again, that will depend on the individual, but usually rule of thumb, if I'm working with, let's say that same 200-pound individual, I'll take fats and I'll times it by zero point 0.5. So give them on maybe 100 grams of fat. And then I'll make tweaks and moderations along the way based on how the person is feeling, how they're responding to the plan, and how they are looking. Okay. And that's where the expertise of a knowledgeable coach comes in because a coach can make those changes based on those factors, right? Whereas a lot of people will just look at the scale and go, oh, I'm not losing weight this week, so I should just probably keep reducing my calories. Not a good idea. If you start playing that calorie game, what's going to happen, you're going to lose fat, but you're also going to lose muscle and water if you go into a severe caloric deficit. If you go into a severe caloric surplus, you're going to put on some muscle, but you're also going to put on some fat and you're also going to put on some water. So you have to look at your macronutrients, but more importantly, you have to look at your micronutrients, the quality of the foods that you are consuming. This is so important. I've used the reference of if you have driving around in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, are you going to fuel it with shitty gas? No, you're going to use premium. You're going to use good stuff, premium fuel. You're going to really take care of that car because, God, we're talking about a $300,000 car here. So treat your body like a luxury car. Treat your body like a Ferrari, like a Lamborghini. Make sure you're fueling it properly. Okay. So this is why I tell people, like you really have to pay attention to what you're eating. And I honestly, I never get involved in people's diets unless they ask me for help. Even my own clients who train with me on the floor, I only give them advice if they ask. If they don't ask, I don't give. Because diet is such a personal thing for so many people. And I just say, okay, well, if what you're doing is getting you results, keep doing it. But 9 times out of 10, it's not. Maybe they have too much dairy. Maybe they have too much fruit or usually have way too much processed sugar or too much simple carbohydrates, whatever it may be. A lot of people don't want to make those changes because it's hard. Okay, and I was talking about this with a client earlier today. The training is easy. Going to the gym, in my opinion, going to the gym, not a problem. I know a lot of people don't like going to the gym, but hey, it's like I said earlier, 45 minutes to an hour of your day. The diet is with you all day. So if you're someone who's really dialed in, you have to make sure that you're in a disciplined individual. And that's where I've put out tons of videos about meal prepping and practicing proper portion control. That is so important because it keeps you in line and it allows you to like almost run like a machine. Okay. So like I talked about in the past, I never have these late afternoon cravings for sugar or for caffeine because I'm constantly fueling my body throughout the day with a combination of complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, and lean proteins. So I'm never going like this with my energy levels. My blood sugar levels and my insulin levels are stable throughout the day. And that is because I'm focusing on not just my macronutrients, but the micronutrients, the quality of the food I'm consuming. I don't, excuse me, I don't count calories. Never have, and I never will. All right. Okay. Nick, what are the best high protein foods for muscle growth? So again, you got to look at the micronutrients, right? So the quality of the foods you're consuming. So I can list off tons of good protein sources. I mean, if you're a meat eater, that could be skinless chicken breast, skinless turkey breast, egg whites. If you're a vegetarian, you could be looking at whey isolate, or they have vegan protein powder as well. Again, if you're a vegan, so there's all kinds of good protein options out there. But you also have to be able to distinguish between a lean protein versus a fatty protein. All the protein sources I just listed are what we call lean protein sources. But then you also have your fatty protein sources, salmon, for example, snapper, okay, ground beef, steak, like flank steak, okay. So these are all healthy. Well, I'm not. I'm not too convinced that red meat is overly healthy, but so-called healthy fatty protein sources. Okay. I'm not a big fan of using red meat. I will use it on people's diets, but I'm not a big fan of it. So the fatty protein sources you have to be careful with because they're also calorically dense. So typically, what I'll do on someone's nutritional plan, if I design a 6 meal plan, I'll put one meal as a lean protein source and another meal as a fatty protein source, and I'll mix them up throughout the day for the other meals. But I'm talking for like let's say meal three, which might be lunch, and meal five, which would be dinner, right? The big meals. So I don't have two fatty protein sources because the person I'm working with, if they, even if they are trying to gain weight, I want to make sure the weight that they're gaining is good weight. So I don't want to put them in too far of a caloric surplus. An 8 ounce serving of salmon is a lot more calories than an 8 ounce serving of chicken breast. They're both protein sources, but the salmon is a fatty protein source and the chicken is a lean protein source. The chicken is not a better protein source because it contains less fat. It's just a different protein source. And it's good to have two. Okay. So, for example, right now I'm doing primarily because it's winter, so I'll stick primarily to poultry. So, my lean protein meal is going to be chicken breast, and my fatty protein meal right now is ground turkey. It's not ground turkey breast, so there is a little bit of fat in there. So, I'm getting it from there. Usually in the summer, I'll go more towards fish. So, I'll do my lean protein source will be cod, and my fatty protein source will be salmon. Okay, so I like to mix up the two. Again, if you're someone who's more vegetarian, you could go a fatty protein source being eggs and or avocado, for example, and a lean protein source could be egg whites, right? So you could do a mixture of all kinds, but don't think that one is better than the other. What you want to be looking for is what contains the least amount of ingredients. I know it should go without saying, but what contains the least amount of processed ingredients? No sugar, obviously. That's a no-brainer right there. But another thing too to look at is your trans fats. You don't want to be consuming anything that has trans fats. Trans fats are not good for us. Okay, so we want to eliminate trans fats. A little bit of saturated fat's okay. Like you're going to see there's some saturated fat in your ground beef. That's fine. You don't want to overdo it, but a little bit of saturated fat's fine. Actually, the body needs a little bit of saturated fat. But I prefer to stick to clean, healthy, fatty sources. So, like I said, omega-3 fats from the salmon, the snapper, that's perfect, right? Extra virgin olive oil, that's another good one right there because it's a good fatty protein source. That's another great one. Okay. Peanut butter. That's another fatty protein source. But you have to remember, those are fatty protein sources. So a good diet should have a combination of the fatty protein sources along with the lean protein sources. That, along with healthy fats and complex carbohydrates, puts together a diet that is sustainable and it's going to be successful long term. Okay. Nick, how important are carbohydrates for building muscle? Personally, again, might not be the most popular opinion. I think carbohydrates are incredibly necessary for building muscle. And there's going to be a lot of people out there that say, well, you don't need carbohydrates to survive. I don't disagree. You don't. You could do a keto diet for the remainder of your life and you will live no problem. You'll probably have less urges or less hunger pangs, I should say, too, because people who are on ketosis diets, they tend to operate really well on ketones, right? So carbohydrates, the problem with carbohydrates, they can spike your blood sugar levels or your insulin levels if you have too many, right? Or you don't have enough, or you're having them sporadically. So that's a problem for a lot of people who can't regulate having carbohydrates, which is another reason why I recommend consuming complex carbohydrates in the form of quinoa, brown rice, white rice, yams, sweet potato, oatmeal, cream of rice, those types of carbs, and staying away from the simple carbohydrates like bread, cereal, pasta. This is stuff that I feel is not a good idea to add into a nutritional plan. I shouldn't say all pasta because there are some pasta out there like whole wheat pasta that's more of a complex carbohydrate source. But for the most part, I don't like to consume simple carbohydrates for the simple reason that they do spike the blood sugar levels and insulin levels. Okay, so you can survive without carbohydrates. That is true. That is the only macronutrient that you can actually survive for the rest of your life without it. And there's a lot of people who love doing keto diets. I am not one of those people. I posted a photo up on my Instagram from a competition I did in 2010 and I won that show. But in my opinion, I looked like garbage. And the reason I looked like garbage was I was doing a ketosis diet. I was very lean, very conditioned, but I lost a lot of muscle, which makes sense because carbohydrates replenish your glycogen storages. And I've talked about glycogen in the past about why it's so vital to have your glycogen storages full when you're working out because it's almost like a cushion for your muscles and it's almost like a hydration for your muscles. So it allows you to lift heavier, lift longer, and utilize that full range of motion. Where if you're running a ketosis diet, for myself personally, I noticed that my strength decreased dramatically in the gym, okay, because I didn't have my glycogen receptors were not full. They were somewhat like they were by half full, but they weren't full because I wasn't consuming any carbohydrates or very little carbohydrates indirectly from fibrous carbohydrates like greens, like spinach, broccoli, asparagus, broccoli. But for the most part, I find that most people need to have a little bit of carbohydrates in their system before they train or after they train, okay, depending on when you train, because that will help replenish glycogen storages, okay? So I don't like to utilize ketosis diets. I have used them in the past with certain individuals, but sparingly, very, very, very rarely do I implement ketosis diets on people's plans. When I make revisions, there's times where I will go maybe higher fat one week and lower carbs and rotate protein sources, but I never take out carbohydrates completely because I do feel that they are necessary when it comes to building muscle. When it comes to survival and long-term health, no, they're not necessary. And that's why a lot of people love doing ketosis diets because they lose a lot of weight, they have lots of energy. But when it comes to, it's kind of like the intermittent fasting. I've talked about that in the past. A great diet to follow for overall health, absolutely. But when it comes to building muscle, not ideal. Okay, so you kind of have to pick what's your goal here. If you want to build like muscle bellies, that solid, lean, dense muscle and aesthetically pleasing physique, in my opinion, you need to consume complex carbohydrates. Remember, I'm saying complex carbohydrates, not simple carbs, complex carbs. All right. Okay, last question. Nick, how do I control hunger while staying in a caloric deficit? Make sure your fats are in check. Okay. So I talked about this, one of the previous questions about how fatty protein sources, for example, you got to be careful because they're calorically dense. That's true. 9 calories per gram when you're looking at fat. That's more than carbs and protein. However, fats have this magical power that allow you to stay fuller for a longer period of time. Fats help regulate your blood sugar levels and your insulin levels so you're not craving more food over a period of time. So, in my opinion, fats are still to this day the most underrated macronutrient. And when I first started training, I used to follow the low fat to no fat diet because that was very popular in the 90s. And I didn't know anything about dietary nutrition. So until I actually taught myself and learned about dietary nutrition and took a few courses to actually learn, wait a second, fats are actually good for us because A, we need fats for our brain. Okay. We need fats to survive. You can't live without fats. Your brain needs fats. Your body needs fats. Okay. Your hormone levels need fats. So fats are a good thing. But we have to make sure that we're consuming healthy fats, not trans fats. Trans fats are what you can find in like when you look at pastries, like when you look at muffins, fried food, right? When you look at like fried chicken and like batter and all that crap. That's stuff we don't want, okay? But the good fats, the omega-3 fats, the fats found in salmon, for example, the fats found in olive oil, in avocados, omega-3 eggs, these are all good fats that our body actually needs. And so whenever I'm working with someone on a nutritional plan, and that person's goal is to lose weight, I typically will start to reduce carbohydrates and increase fats. So even though from a caloric perspective, they actually might be consuming a lot of calories, they're still losing weight because A, calorie counting is irrelevant, okay? Especially if you're someone who is lifting weights and doing cardio, so you're trying to build muscle and lose fat. And B, when you're doing focusing more towards the fat content, you're allowing your body to like stay fuller for a longer period of time, which just keeps you kind of like this. Okay. So you're not ravenous. You're not constantly hungry. Okay. Whereas if you're following a diet that's very high in carbohydrates, but very low to no fat, you're going to feel like you're constantly hungry, even if it's complex carbohydrates. Okay. So you have to be careful with that. So anyone who comes to work with me and says, I need to lose fat, I'm like, well, you need to eat more fats. 9 times out of 10, they need to eat more fats and the right type of fats. And if I'm working with someone who has no idea, like no concept of dietary nutrition, they always think I'm crazy when I say this. I'm like, just trust me. And like it's a funny one too, because when I put like almond butter or peanut butter or cashew butter on someone's plan, and I always get, not always, but I get people who are beginners and they go, are you sure you want me to have this? I mean, peanut butter is like 100 calories for a gram, or a tablespoon of peanut butter is 100 calories, 8 grams of fat. Oh my God. Like I'm trying to lose weight here. I'm like, trust me, have the peanut butter because you're going to have that peanut butter with, let's say, a scoop of whey isolate protein powder. Okay. So altogether, what you're looking at maybe 220 calories. Okay. Scoop of whey isolate is 120, 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, 100, there's 220 calories. Okay. What's going to happen though is that 220 calories is going to keep you feeling fuller for a longer period of time, so you don't overeat or you don't have an urge to eat or you don't feel like ravenous or low blood sugar levels, and now you need to eat right away again, or you have low energy levels and now you need caffeine or some type of stimulant. Okay, so that's why I say you can't just look at the calories. You have to look at the quality of the food you're consuming. The micronutrients are so important. Okay. And that's why I always talk about too, eat like shit, look like shit, feel like shit. Okay. So fuel your body properly and you're going to feel better. You're going to look better. You're going to sleep better. You're going to recover better. Okay. It does take discipline, but once you've dialed in your diet, everything else becomes so easy. It really does. So if you're trying to lose fat, consume more fat, but make sure you're consuming the right types of fat. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, November the 24th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, your workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, as well as my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. Thank you all again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.